Fort Reading was the kind of place that didn't welcome dreams. It stripped them. It buried them under dust, sweat, and rules that never bent for anyone. And on a cold Monday morning, Private Emily Carter stood at the edge of the training field, staring at the vast stretch of land that would decide whether she survived or disappeared into failure like so many before her. The wind cut across the base like a blade. It carried the sound of shouting instructors, the slam of metal doors, and the rhythm of boots hitting concrete in perfect unison. Everything here moved like a machine, and anyone who didn't fit inside it broke. Emily adjusted the strap of her gear bag and stepped forward. Her uniform still looked too new compared to the others. Her boots still hadn't been fully worn down by miles of punishment marches, but her eyes carried something that didn't belong to a beginner. Focus. Not confidence. Not arrogance. Something quieter. Something stubborn. Something that refused to leave. Arrival. When she first arrived at Fort Reading 3 days earlier, nobody had said much to her. They didn't need to. The silence was enough. A female recruit in a unit dominated by hardened men was already a story before she even spoke a word. Some watched her with curiosity, others with amusement, a few with open disrespect. Wrong place, one recruit muttered when she passed him in the barracks. Another smirked, she'll quit before week 2. Emily heard every word. But she didn't respond. She had learned early in life that defending yourself too soon only gave others permission to test you harder. So she stayed quiet. And that silence bothered them even more. The drill sergeant, Captain Rhodes, was already waiting when she joined the formation. He didn't look like a man who needed to raise his voice to be heard. He didn't even look angry. That was worse, because calm men like him didn't waste energy unless something needed to be destroyed. His eyes scanned the recruits like he was evaluating tools, not people. When his gaze finally landed on Emily, it lingered for half a second longer than the others. Then moved on. Like she wasn't special. Or maybe like she already was. Listen up, Rhodes barked suddenly. The entire line snapped into attention. Even those who had been laughing seconds earlier froze instantly. This is not a classroom. This is not a sports camp. This is Fort Reading. He stepped forward slowly. Some of you will fail. Some of you will quit. And some of you will break so badly you won't recognize yourself when you leave. A pause. Then his voice dropped lower. But those who survive will become something this world respects. His eyes sharpened. Move. First impressions matter. The first drill was simple. At least on paper. A basic endurance run combined with physical obstacles, wall climbs, rope ascents, mud crawls, and timed sprints. But nothing here was ever simple. Because the point wasn't the obstacle. It was how people reacted when they were tired, when their lungs burned, when their pride started slipping faster than their strength. Emily lined up beside the others. A tall recruit next to her glanced over. "You sure you don't want to sit this one out?" he said with a half smile. "No shame in watching first." Emily didn't look at him. "I'm fine," she said quietly. That was all. The whistle blew. The first mile. They ran. Hard. Fast. Dust kicked up around their boots as the formation stretched into chaos. Within minutes the strong pulled ahead, the weak fell behind, the middle group fought to stay steady. Emily stayed in the middle. Not because she was slow, but because she was observing. She watched breathing patterns, stride lengths, fatigue distribution. She noticed how some recruits wasted energy early, sprinting like they were trying to prove something instead of survive. She didn't do that. She paced herself. That alone made her noticeable. And in Fort Reading, being noticeable was dangerous. The obstacle wall. The first real test came at the 12-minute mark. A 12-foot wooden wall. Slippery, worn, unforgiving. Recruits began stacking up in front of it. Some tried jumping early and failed. Others waited too long and lost rhythm. The line stalled. Frustration spread quickly. "Move faster," someone shouted from behind. "I can't get grip. This is wasting time." Emily arrived at the wall and didn't stop. She studied it for half a second, then placed her boot on the lower beam. One step, then another. Her hands found the top edge. She pulled. For a moment she hung there, weight suspended, wind pressing against her. Then she pushed upward and landed cleanly on the other side. No hesitation, no wasted movement, just execution. A few recruits stared. One muttered, "Lucky." But Captain Rhodes, watching from a distance, didn't say anything. He just observed, carefully, like he was writing something in his mind. The slip. Halfway through the course, things began to unravel. A recruit ahead of Emily lost footing during a mud crawl and crashed sideways into another runner. Then another. Within seconds, 3 soldiers were tangled in a collapsing chain reaction of bodies, dirt, and confusion. The formation broke. Orders were shouted. Nobody listened. Emily slowed instantly, stepping around the chaos instead of joining it. "Clear left," someone yelled. "Get up. Move." But panic spreads faster than commands. One of the falling recruits grabbed her leg accidentally. Emily stumbled. Not badly, but enough. Enough for Captain Rhodes to notice. His eyes narrowed. And just like that, the situation shifted. The decision. The drill ended. Time was recorded. But results didn't matter as much as perception. Rhodes stepped forward. "Carter," he called. Her name cut through the noise instantly. She stepped out of formation. "Yes, sir." He didn't ask questions. He didn't review footage. He didn't care about explanations. "In combat," he said coldly, "there are no excuses, only outcomes." "I understand, sir. You caused disruption in your lane. I was pulled off balance." Silence. That single word stopped her mid-sentence. The field went quiet. Even the wind felt distant for a moment. Rhodes walked closer. Not fast. Not aggressive. Controlled. That control made him more intimidating than any shouting instructor could ever be. "You think understanding what happened matters?" he asked quietly. Emily held his gaze. "No, sir." A pause. Then he leaned slightly closer. "Then drop. The punishment begins. 200 push-ups." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. Everyone heard them clearly. A few recruits exchanged looks. Even they knew it was excessive for a first drill. But nobody spoke. Nobody intervened. Because Fort Reading didn't reward fairness. It rewarded survival. Emily dropped instantly. No hesitation. Hands in the dirt. Body aligned. Position perfect. And then she began. The braking attempt. At first it looked like punishment. Then it became something else. 10 push-ups. Her arms burned. The ground was wet and uneven. Mud clung to her palms. Her breathing grew heavier. The other recruits continued training while glancing at her between drills. Some smiled. Some ignored her. A few looked uncomfortable. But none stopped. Rhodes stood above her, watching, waiting, looking for something. A break in rhythm, a sign of weakness, a hesitation. But it didn't come. The silence between reps. At 100 push-ups, something shifted. Her movement slowed slightly. Not from exhaustion alone. From focus. Her breathing changed. Controlled now. Measured. Like she was locking herself into a rhythm no one else could see. At 120, her shoulders trembled. At 140, sweat mixed with dirt on her face. At 160, her arms shook visibly. But she didn't stop. And that's when something subtle happened. Captain Rhodes noticed. Not the pain. Not the effort. The consistency. Most recruits broke rhythm under stress. She didn't. Even under strain, her form stayed precise. That was not normal. That was trained. Or natural. Or something worse. Something built under pressure. The final stretch. Her breathing was heavier now. But still controlled. Still steady. Around her, the camp continued moving. But she was isolated. Not physically, but socially. A punishment designed not just to discipline, but to separate, to make her visible, to test whether she would collapse under attention. The moment that changed everything. At 195 push-ups, one recruit whispered, "She should quit." Another replied, "She won't." And then, she stopped. Not collapsing. Not falling. Just stopping. A second passed. Then she pushed herself up to standing. Slowly. Cleanly. No collapse. No dramatic fall. Just control. Captain Rhodes stared at her. For the first time since she arrived. He didn't immediately look away. Something in his expression changed slightly. Not approval. Not respect. Something more dangerous. Interest. Because breaking a soldier is easy. But recognizing one who doesn't break, that's rare. Emily stood still, breathing hard, mud on her uniform, eyes forward. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between her and the man watching her. This wasn't over. Not even close. And deep inside Fort Reading, something had just started. The next morning began before sunrise. At Fort Reading, mornings didn't arrive gently. They exploded. Sirens blared through the barracks at 4:30 a.m., followed by pounding boots and the roar of instructors dragging exhausted recruits from sleep like soldiers being pulled into battle. Emily Carter opened her eyes instantly. For 1 second, her body refused to move. Pain shot through her shoulders the moment she tried sitting up. The 200 push-ups from yesterday had left every muscle burning like fire trapped beneath her skin. Around her, recruits groaned and cursed quietly while scrambling into uniform. "You alive, Carter?" someone muttered from across the room. Emily ignored him. She sat up slowly and tightened the laces on her boots. Every movement hurt. But pain inside Fort Reading wasn't special. It was currency. Everyone paid. The barracks divide. The atmosphere inside the barracks had changed after the punishment. Before, most recruits ignored Emily. Now they watched her. Not openly. Not always. But enough. Because people respected suffering they witnessed with their own eyes. Especially suffering survived without complaint. Still, respect didn't mean acceptance. As Emily adjusted her gear, a recruit named Logan leaned against the bunk beside hers. Logan Mercer was loud, athletic, and naturally competitive, the type who needed everyone around him to know he belonged at the top. You know Rhodes only punished you that hard because you mouthed off, he said. Emily kept packing. I answered his question. You challenged him. No. Logan smirked. You really don't understand how this place works yet. Emily finally looked at him. And you do. The smirk faded slightly. That annoyed him more than an insult would have. Before he could answer, the barracks door slammed open. Formation in 60 seconds, an instructor shouted. The room exploded into movement. The new drill. Outside, freezing wind swept across the training grounds. The recruits lined up under floodlights, while Captain Rhodes walked slowly in front of them. No wasted movement. No wasted words. Today, he said, we begin tactical response simulations. Several recruits straightened immediately. This was different from endurance drills. This was strategy, pressure, leadership. And leadership exposed weakness faster than physical training ever could. Rhodes continued. You will operate in squads. Each squad will complete a live field extraction exercise. He paused. I will choose squad leaders personally. A quiet ripple spread through the formation. Everyone wanted leadership. Because leadership meant visibility. Visibility meant promotion. And promotion meant survival. Rhodes began reading names. Squad 1 Mercer. Logan stepped forward proudly. Squad 2 Daniels. Another recruit nodded sharply. Then Rhodes looked directly at Emily. Squad 3 Carter. Silence. Actual silence. A few recruits genuinely thought they heard wrong. Logan turned immediately. You're kidding. Rhodes ignored him. Emily stepped forward calmly. Yes, sir. But inside, even she felt surprised. Not because she doubted herself. Because she understood what this really was. This wasn't trust. This was another test. And maybe another punishment. Resentment builds fast. The moment training began, the tension inside Emily's squad became obvious. She had 6 recruits under her command for the exercise. Only one of them looked remotely supportive. The others looked irritated. Or openly hostile. You really think you should be leading this? One recruit asked while checking his gear. Emily tightened the strap on her tactical vest. No. The answer caught him off guard. She continued calmly. I think Rhodes assigned me, and the mission starts in 10 minutes. That shut him up temporarily. But not permanently. Because resentment inside military teams grows quickly when pride gets involved. Especially when leadership comes from someone others already underestimated. The mission brief. The squads gathered around a large terrain map. An instructor pointed toward a marked forest zone north of the camp. Scenario: hostile territory. He tapped another location. Your objective is to retrieve a simulated intelligence package and reach extraction before time expires. What's the threat level? Someone asked. Unknown. Several recruits exchanged looks. Unknown meant pressure. The instructor continued. You will encounter environmental obstacles, simulated enemy contact, and changing conditions. Then came the warning. Your leaders are responsible for every decision. Emily noticed several recruits glanced toward her immediately. Waiting, judging, expecting failure before the mission even started. Into the forest. The transport trucks dropped the squads near the edge of a dense forest an hour later. Cold wind pushed through the trees. The deeper woods looked dark even during daylight. Emily checked her compass, terrain sheet, and timing. Then she looked at her squad. We move east first, she said. Logan, leading another squad nearby, overheard her and laughed. East route slower. Emily didn't react. One of her own recruits crossed his arms. He's right. Maybe, Emily replied. But the North Trail bottlenecks near the ravine. Too many teams will hit traffic. You don't know that. No, she admitted, but I know crowded routes slow teams down. A pause. Then she started walking. Again. They followed. Reluctantly. But they followed. The first problem. For the first 20 minutes, things went smoothly. Too smoothly. That usually meant trouble was coming. The forest terrain became rougher with every mile. Mud deepened beneath their boots. Fallen branches blocked pathways. Then suddenly, a scream echoed ahead. The squad froze instantly. One recruit pointed. Contact. Emily raised a hand. Quiet. They moved carefully toward the sound and found another squad stuck near a steep ditch where one recruit had slipped badly and injured his leg during descent. Chaos surrounded the scene. People shouting. Multiple opinions. Nobody leading. The injured recruit grimaced in pain, while others argued about whether to leave him behind for simulation points. Emily studied the situation quickly. How long, she asked. 10 minutes already, someone answered. 10 minutes wasted. That was deadly during timed extraction exercises. Emily stepped toward the ditch edge. You, she pointed at two recruits, find stable branches. Then toward another. You secure rope support. The others stared. Not because the instructions were brilliant. Because they were immediate. Clear. Confident. Something the other squad lacked entirely. Within minutes, Emily organized a lifting system using support straps and fallen timber. The injured recruit was pulled free safely. One of the observing instructors nearby raised an eyebrow slightly. Emily noticed, but kept moving. Let's go, she told her squad. And for the first time since training started, nobody argued. Captain Rhodes watches. Back at the mobile command station, Captain Rhodes observed the field monitors silently. Several instructors stood nearby, reviewing squad progress. Mercer's team is moving fastest, one instructor commented. Rhodes didn't answer. Another pointed toward Emily's squad footage. Carter lost time helping another unit. Still no response. Then one instructor frowned slightly. She stabilized the situation faster than Daniels did. Rhodes finally spoke. Leadership isn't speed. The others glanced toward him. He continued watching Emily's squad carefully. Especially Emily herself. Every decision. Every reaction. Every moment under pressure. Because he wasn't testing whether she could follow orders anymore. He was testing whether she could command people who didn't want to follow her. That was much harder. The ravine crossing. 30 minutes into the mission, Emily's squad reached the ravine and immediately understood the problem. The crossing bridge had partially collapsed. Wooden planks hung loose over a steep drop lined with jagged rocks below. Wind whipped through the gap aggressively. One recruit stared downward nervously. No way. We go around, another said instantly. Emily checked the map. Going around would add at least 20 minutes. Too long. Mission failure territory. She studied the bridge structure carefully. Old support cables still held tension. Not stable. But possible. Logan's squad appeared behind them moments later. Well, he said smugly, guess your shortcut worked out. Emily ignored him. Logan stepped toward the bridge. My squad crosses first. You'll overload the supports, Emily said. He laughed. You giving orders to me now? No, she replied evenly. I'm warning you." That only irritated him more. Without waiting, Logan stepped onto the bridge. Two of his squad members followed. The structure groaned instantly. Emily's eyes narrowed. "Stop moving." Too late. A loud crack split through the air. One of the lower support planks snapped violently. A recruit lost balance and nearly slipped through the gap. Panic erupted instantly. "Move back. Don't run. Grab him." The bridge swayed dangerously. Emily reacted immediately. "Everybody freeze." Her voice cut through the chaos, sharply enough that people actually obeyed. Even Logan. For one critical second, everyone stopped moving. Emily moved carefully onto the bridge. Step by step. Controlled. Calm. The trapped recruit was trembling badly now, one leg hanging dangerously through broken boards. "Look at me," Emily said firmly. The recruit nodded shakily. "Don't pull upward. Shift weight slowly toward me." The bridge creaked again. Several people behind them held their breath. Emily lowered herself carefully, grabbed the recruit's vest, and stabilized him against the remaining support beam. "Now move." Together, inch by inch, they reached safer footing. Then finally, solid ground. The entire group exhaled at once. Logan stared at her. Not smug anymore. Not confident. Confused. Because the girl he expected to fail had just saved one of his own squad members. And worse, she had done it while he froze. The shift begins. After the ravine incident, the energy around Emily changed completely. Nobody said it openly, but the difference was obvious. Recruits listened faster now. Questions replaced sarcasm. Even Logan stopped making comments. Not because he liked her, because doubt had entered his mind. And doubt changes everything. The storm. The deeper they moved into the forest, the worse conditions became. Rain started suddenly. Cold. Heavy. Visibility dropped fast. Mud thickened around their boots, slowing movement. One recruit cursed under his breath. "We're losing time." Emily checked the terrain again. Then she noticed something. Fresh tire tracks. Recent. Too recent for standard simulation placement. Her eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. She crouched beside the tracks. Military transport pattern. Heavy load movement. Not part of the exercise. Then, distant shouting echoed through the trees. Not simulated. Real. Emily stood instantly. Everybody down. The squad obeyed immediately now. No hesitation. Another shout echoed. Closer this time. Then came something nobody expected. A flare shot upward through the forest canopy. Bright red. Emergency signal. Real emergency signal. Every recruit looked around in confusion. "This isn't part of training," someone whispered. Emily already knew that. And deep inside the forest, something had gone terribly wrong. The red flare burned across the sky like a warning from another world. For a second, nobody moved. Rain hammered through the trees while the flare slowly descended beyond the forest canopy, casting strange red light across the mud and soaked uniforms. Every recruit stared upward. Confused. Uneasy. One whispered the question everyone was thinking. Was that part of the simulation? Emily already knew the answer. No. The word came out instantly. Cold. Certain. And that certainty made the others nervous. Because if the training exercise had stopped being training, then nobody knew what came next. The silence before panic. The forest suddenly felt different. A few moments earlier, recruits had been competing for points and rankings. Now every sound seemed dangerous. Branches cracking in the distance. Wind pushing through the trees. The endless rain masking movement somewhere beyond sight. One recruit adjusted his rifle nervously. "What do we do?" Emily looked toward the direction of the flare. The emergency signal had come from deeper north, near the restricted side of the training zone. No recruits were supposed to be there. Then another sound echoed faintly. Not shouting this time. An explosion. Small, but real. Several heads snapped upward instantly. "That was not simulated," another recruit said. Fear spread fast after that. Real fear. Not training stress. Not embarrassment. The kind that tightens your chest and makes your brain start imagining worst-case scenarios before logic can catch up. And fear inside inexperienced teams creates chaos faster than anything else. Emily understood that immediately. So she forced her voice to stay calm. "We moved toward the signal." One recruit stared at her. "Are you insane? If there's an actual emergency, we don't sit here. We're recruits. And there are soldiers out there." The recruit opened his mouth again, but stopped, because deep down he knew she was right. Command breaks down. As they moved through the forest, radio chatter suddenly erupted through static. Broken voices. Partial commands. "All units hold. Injured near sector. Repeat, this is not." Then silence again. Logan appeared through the trees with two members of his squad. His face looked completely different now. The arrogance was gone. "What's happening?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "Don't know yet." Another explosion echoed somewhere ahead. Closer this time. One of Logan's squad members flinched visibly. "We should go back to base." "And leave whoever's out there?" Emily asked. Logan hesitated. That hesitation told Emily everything. The situation was bigger than any of them expected. Then suddenly, gunfire cracked through the trees. Short bursts. Real rounds. Not blanks. Every recruit hit the ground instantly. Several panicked immediately. "Oh God! What the hell is happening?" "Stay down," Emily shouted. Her heart hammered hard now. Not from fear alone. From realization. This was no longer a controlled exercise. The wreck. They moved carefully toward the source of the explosion. And then they saw it. A military transport vehicle had crashed into a rocky slope deep inside the forest. Smoke poured upward through the rain. One tire was completely destroyed. The front windshield shattered. Two soldiers were outside the vehicle trying to pull equipment free, while another sat against a tree, gripping a bleeding shoulder. Emily froze for half a second. Real injuries. Real blood. Everything changed after that. One of the soldiers spotted them immediately. "You recruits," he shouted. "Yes, sir," Emily answered. "Then stop starring and help." That snapped everyone back into motion. Emily ran toward the injured soldier first. "What happened?" "Supply convoy hit unstable ground during storm," the soldier said through pain. "Vehicle rolled." Emily quickly checked the wound. Not fatal, but bad enough. Another soldier nearby cursed, while trying to free trapped equipment from the damaged transport. "We lost radio contact with base." Emily looked around quickly. "How many injured?" "3. And the gunfire." The soldier's expression darkened slightly. "Wildlife Control Unit." Emily frowned. "What? Wolves?" The forest threat. The storm had driven a nearby wolf pack out of deeper terrain. Normally, they avoided military zones, but the crash noise and scattered supplies had drawn them closer. The gunfire recruits heard earlier wasn't combat. It was warning fire. And now darkness was coming. Vast. One recruit stared into the forest nervously. "You're joking." Then a distant howl echoed through the trees. Nobody laughed after that. Leadership appears under pressure. The injured soldiers needed evacuation. But communication with base was unstable. The transport vehicle couldn't move. And nightfall in storm conditions would make extraction nearly impossible. The senior injured soldier looked at the recruits. "You all know navigation." Nobody answered immediately. Except Emily. "Yes, sir." The soldier pointed toward a ridge visible beyond the forest. "There's an emergency signal tower 2 kilometers northeast. We restore communication there, or we stay stranded all night." Logan spoke quickly. "We should wait for instructors." "No guarantee they can reach us in this weather," the soldier replied sharply. Silence again. Then his eyes landed on Emily. "You seem calm." Emily didn't feel calm, but she understood something important. Panic wastes time. Action creates options. "We'll go," she said. Several recruits looked at her in disbelief. "In this storm, we don't have a choice." The soldier nodded once. "Take whoever can move fast." Emily turned toward the group. "I need 4 volunteers." For 1 second, nobody moved. Then slowly, Logan stepped forward. Not smiling. Not joking. "I'm in." 3 others followed. Emily nodded once. "Let's move." Into the darkness. The forest became brutal after sunset. Rain soaked everything. Mud pulled at their boots like hands, dragging them backward. Visibility dropped to almost nothing except for weak flashlight beams cutting through the storm. Branches snapped somewhere nearby every few minutes. Nobody liked that. One recruit whispered nervously, "You think the wolves are actually following us?" Nobody answered. Because nobody wanted to think about it. Emily led from the front, checking compass direction constantly while navigating steep terrain. Logan moved beside her quietly for a while before finally speaking. "You really don't get scared, do you?" Emily kept walking. "Everybody gets scared. You don't look it." "That doesn't matter." The answer stayed with him. Because most recruits at Fort Reading confused confidence with fearlessness. But Emily wasn't fearless. She simply refused to let fear make decisions for her. That difference changes people under pressure. The fall. An hour into the hike, disaster struck again. One recruit slipped on wet rocks while descending a steep slope. He screamed as his leg twisted violently beneath him. The group stopped instantly. The recruit groaned in pain, clutching his ankle. "I can't walk." Rain poured harder now. The signal tower still wasn't visible. And time was running out. "We leave him and come back," one recruit said nervously. Emily looked at him sharply. "No. We'll never reach the tower carrying dead weight." Logan stepped forward immediately. "He's not dead weight." The recruit backed off. Emily crouched beside the injured soldier. Ankle swollen badly. Possibly fractured. Walking normally was impossible. She looked around quickly. Then removed part of her gear straps. "What are you doing?" Logan asked. "Making a support sling." Within minutes, Emily constructed a crude brace using straps and broken branches. Then she stood. "We carry him in shifts." The injured recruit stared at her. "Why are you helping me?" Emily looked at him calmly. Because that's the mission. The wolves. Half an hour later, they heard movement behind them. Not branches. Footsteps. Several. The group stopped instantly. Another low growl echoed through the darkness. One recruit whispered, "Oh no." Two glowing eyes appeared briefly between the trees. Then another. Then three more. The wolves had followed them. Every recruit raised weapons instinctively. But Emily raised her hand. "Don't fire unless necessary." "Are you crazy?" someone hissed. Gunfire could trigger landslides in this terrain. The growling grew louder. The wolves circled carefully now, testing distance. Predators. Patient. The injured recruit panicked. "They're going to attack." Emily grabbed a flare from her emergency pouch. Then another. "On my signal," she said calmly, "everyone stays close together." One wolf stepped closer. Its eyes reflected sharply in the darkness. Then Emily ignited the flare. Bright red light exploded across the trees. The wolves immediately recoiled. She threw the burning flare toward the front of the pack, while Logan ignited the second. More light. More heat. The wolves backed away slowly, growling, watching, then finally disappeared deeper into the forest. Nobody spoke for several seconds afterward, because they all understood something now. Without Emily, that situation could have turned catastrophic. The tower. Near midnight, they finally reached the emergency signal tower. It stood alone atop a rocky ridge, half hidden by storm and darkness. Old, rusting, barely operational, but still standing. Emily forced the metal access door open, while Logan helped the injured recruit inside. The control system flickered weakly. "No power," one recruit muttered. Emily scanned the backup system quickly. Battery damaged. Manual generator still functional. "We can restart it manually." "How?" Emily pointed toward the side crank system. "We rotate in pairs." For the next 15 minutes, exhausted recruits manually powered the emergency generator while rain hammered the tower walls. Finally, lights flickered, then stabilized. The communication console crackled alive. Static burst loudly through the room. Then a voice came through. "Identify yourself immediately." Relief hit the room instantly. Emily grabbed the radio. "This is Recruit Carter from Fort Redding Training Unit. We have injured personnel and disabled transport near North Forest Sector." Silence. Then, "Carter." Emily frowned slightly. The voice recognized her name. Then another voice came onto the line. Deeper. Colder. "Captain Rhodes." "Report." Emily quickly explained the situation. When she finished, silence followed again. Then Rhodes spoke calmly. "Hold position. Rescue team inbound." The recruits around her visibly relaxed for the first time all night. But Rhodes wasn't finished. "Carter." "Yes, sir." Another pause. Then, "You kept people alive tonight." The line went silent. Emily slowly lowered the radio. And for the first time since arriving at Fort Redding, she realized something had changed. Not just in the eyes of the recruits. Not just in the instructors. Something bigger. The camp that had tried to break her was beginning to see her differently. Not as a burden. Not as punishment. But as a soldier. And sometimes, that realization creates enemies just as quickly as respect. The rescue convoy arrived just before dawn. By then, the storm had weakened, but the forest still looked like a battlefield. Mud covered everything. Broken branches littered the slopes. The emergency tower lights flickered weakly against the gray morning sky, while exhausted recruits sat against the walls trying to recover what little energy they had left. Emily Carter hadn't slept once, not even for a minute. She stood near the tower entrance, watching the approaching headlights cut through the fog. Behind her, the injured recruit she helped carry through the forest finally spoke quietly. "You saved my life." Emily didn't answer immediately, because the truth was complicated. If they had arrived 10 minutes later, if the wolves had attacked, if the tower generator had failed, things could have ended very differently. "We all made it," she said finally. The recruit shook his head slowly. "No, we made it because you kept moving." Before Emily could respond, military trucks rolled to a stop outside the tower. Doors opened instantly. Medics rushed toward the injured soldiers, while armed personnel secured the perimeter. And then Captain Rhodes stepped out of the lead vehicle. The entire atmosphere shifted. Even exhausted recruits straightened automatically. Rhodes walked through the mud calmly, his sharp eyes taking in everything at once: the tower, the injuries, the recruits, the condition of the equipment. Then his gaze stopped on Emily. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The other recruits watched carefully, because everyone remembered the punishment. Everyone remembered the humiliation on the training field. But this was different now. Very different. Rhodes finally looked toward the medics. "Status: one fractured ankle, 2 moderate injuries from the convoy crash, no fatalities." The medic paused before adding, "Honestly, sir, these recruits handled the situation well." Rhodes gave a short nod. Then his eyes returned to Emily. "You led the signal recovery team." "Yes, sir." "Who gave you authorization?" The question hit sharply. Several recruits looked nervous instantly. Emily answered without hesitation. "No one, sir." Rhodes stared at her for several seconds. The wind moved through the trees quietly around them. Then he asked, "Why did you do it?" Emily's answer came immediately. "Because waiting would have cost time." "Time for what?" "Rescue." Silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. Captain Rhodes stepped closer. Close enough that only the nearby recruits could hear his next words. "That answer," he said quietly, "is why you survived last night." And then he walked away. But the damage was already done. Everyone heard enough. And just like that, the same camp that once laughed at Emily Carter began looking at her differently. Not with sympathy. Not with kindness. With respect. Back at Fort Reading, the return to base should have felt victorious. Instead, it felt tense. Because success changes social dynamics faster than failure ever does. Especially in competitive environments. As recruits unloaded gear later that morning, conversations followed Emily everywhere. "That was insane. She actually led them through the storm." "I heard Rhodes personally called her out." "She carried a recruit with a fractured ankle." Some sounded impressed. Others sounded bitter. And bitterness spreads quickly among people who feel left behind. Logan noticed it too. As he cleaned mud from his gear beside Emily, he finally spoke. "You know half the camp hates you now, right?" Emily kept cleaning her rifle. "They already did." "Not like this." She glanced at him. Logan leaned back against the bench. "Before they thought you were weak, that was easy to laugh at." He looked around the barracks. "Now they think you might actually be better than them." Emily said nothing, because she knew he was right. And that kind of fear creates dangerous people. The rumors begin. Within 2 days, stories about the forest incident spread across the entire base. Like all military stories, each version became more dramatic than the last. Some recruits claimed Emily fought off wolves herself. Others said she carried 2 injured soldiers through the storm alone. One ridiculous rumor claimed Captain Rhodes recommended her for advanced combat evaluation immediately after the mission. Most of it wasn't true, but none of it mattered, because perception shapes reputation faster than facts. And now Emily Carter had won. Unfortunately, reputation also attracts challenges. The challenge. 3 nights later, the recruits gathered inside the training gym after evening drills. Exhaustion hung heavily in the air. Sweaty uniforms, bruised hands, sore muscles, the usual atmosphere of Fort Reading. Emily sat quietly near the back drinking water when a voice suddenly echoed across the room. "Carter." She looked up. Staff Sergeant Mason stood near the combat mats. Unlike Rhodes, Mason was loud, aggressive, and loved public pressure. He pointed toward the center mat. Front and center. Several recruits instantly looked interested. Public callouts never ended casually. Emily stood and walked forward calmly. Mason crossed his arms. "I've been hearing a lot about you." Nobody spoke. Mason smirked slightly. "Hero of the forest." A few recruits laughed nervously. Emily remained expressionless. Mason stepped closer. "You think one successful night makes you special?" "No, Sergeant." "Good answer." He pointed toward another recruit stepping onto the mat. Corporal Trainee Victor Hale. 6'3". Former college wrestler. One of the strongest recruits in camp. Mason grinned. "Let's test something." The room became completely silent. Hale cracked his neck confidently. "You serious?" one recruit whispered. Everyone knew what this was. A humiliation setup. Mason looked at Emily. Combat sparring, first to submission. Some recruits looked uncomfortable immediately. Because Hale outweighed Emily by at least 80 pounds. Mason clearly expected this to end badly. And maybe publicly. Emily understood that too. But she stepped onto the mat anyway. The fight begins. Start. Hale attacked immediately. Fast. Aggressive. Trying to overpower her before technique mattered. Emily moved sideways instantly. Not retreating. Redirecting. Hale lunged again, grabbing for her shoulder. Emily twisted free narrowly. The gym erupted with shouting. "Take her down." "She's done." Hale pushed harder now, frustrated she wasn't folding immediately. He swung again. Emily ducked beneath it, then struck sharply against his side. Not powerful. Precise. Hale grunted. Surprised. The room reacted instantly. Wait. She hit him. Mason's smirk faded slightly. Hale attacked harder now. Too hard. Emotion was taking over. And emotional fighters make mistakes. Emily noticed his weight shifting too aggressively forward during attacks. So she waited. Watched. Calculated. Then it happened. Hale charged again, aiming for a full-body takedown. Emily pivoted at the last second. Used his momentum. And suddenly, the massive recruit lost balance completely. The entire gym gasped as Hale slammed hard onto the mat. Emily locked his arm instantly before he could recover. 1 second. 2 seconds. Hale struggled violently. Couldn't break free. Mason stared. The gym exploded into shouting. No way. She got him. Hale's trapped. 3 more seconds passed. Then Hale slapped the mat. Submission. The room went dead silent afterward. Not cheering, not laughing, stunned, because everyone understood what they had just witnessed. This wasn't luck anymore. This wasn't survival. Emily Carter had just defeated one of the strongest recruits in camp in front of everyone. And suddenly, the balance of Fort Reading shifted permanently. Captain Rhodes' decision. Later that night, Emily was summoned to Rhodes' office. The room felt cold and minimal, just like the man himself. Rhodes sat behind his desk, reviewing paperwork when she entered. At ease, Emily stood silently. Rhodes closed the file slowly. "You embarrassed Hale tonight," Emily answered honestly. "That wasn't my intention, sir." "I know." That surprised her slightly. Rhodes leaned back. "Do you know why I punished you during your first week here?" Emily hesitated. "No, sir." "Because you were angry." Her eyes narrowed slightly. Rhodes continued calmly. "You hid it well, but it was there." He stood and walked toward the window, overlooking the training grounds. "Angry soldiers are dangerous." Another pause. "But controlled soldiers." He looked back at her. "Become leaders." Emily stayed silent. Then Rhodes said something she never expected to hear. "You're being transferred to advanced tactical evaluation." Her eyes widened slightly despite herself. That program was elite level, reserved for the best performing soldiers on base. Rhodes studied her reaction carefully. "Don't mistake this for reward." "Yes, sir." "It will be harder than anything you've experienced here." Emily nodded once. "I understand." Rhodes stepped closer. "The camp punished you because weakness spreads." A pause. "But strength spreads too." For the first time since arriving at Fort Reading, Emily finally understood something important. Rhodes had never been trying to destroy her. He had been testing whether pressure would expose weakness or reveal something stronger. And now he had his answer. The final formation. The next morning, the entire recruit battalion assembled on the main training field. Cold air moved across hundreds of soldiers, standing in perfect formation beneath the rising sun. Captain Rhodes stepped forward. "3 weeks ago," he said loudly, "many of you arrived here believing strength was physical." He paced slowly. "You believed loudness meant confidence. You believed aggression meant leadership." His eyes moved across the formation. "You were wrong." Silence covered the field. Then Rhodes called out, "Private Emily Carter." Emily stepped forward immediately. Every eye followed her. Rhodes faced the recruits. This soldier was challenged, isolated, underestimated, and punished. A long pause. And every time pressure increased. His voice sharpened. She improved. Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. Rhodes turned toward Emily. "Fort Reading recognizes performance, not ego, not excuses." Then came the words nobody expected. "Private Carter is hereby ranked top recruit of this training cycle." The field erupted into stunned reactions. Some recruits looked shocked, some proud, some angry, but none could deny it anymore. Emily Carter, the girl they mocked, punished, and underestimated, had become the best soldier in camp. And as she stood there beneath the rising morning sun, one realization echoed silently through Fort Reading. They tried to break her. Instead, they created someone stronger than all of them expected.